The late 1960s, Northern California was a place of wild optimism. The summer of love had just faded into memory, but San Francisco was still loud, vibrant, and buzzing with life. It felt like the worst days were behind them, that a new era of peace and understanding was just beginning. They were wrong. It began on a cold December night in 1968, on the outskirts of LA. A young couple, looking for a quiet moment, parked their car on a secluded lover's lane. Nothing about the moment felt dangerous, it was just another night. Then headlights appeared behind them. A car approached, stopped, then drove away, only to return moments later. Gunshots shattered the silence. When police finally arrived on the scene, one victim was already dead. The other survived just long enough to describe the attack: a man, a flashlight, a cold, methodical execution. Authorities initially treated it as an isolated, albeit brutal crime. No one could have imagined this was just the opening chapter of a story that would terrorize California for decades. 6 months passed. Then, in July of 1969, 3 letters arrived, delivered to 3 different major newspapers in the Bay Area. Each letter contained chilling details about the crime that only the killer could know. The writer claimed responsibility for the murders and made a terrifying demand: publish his letters on the front page, or he would cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night. Inside each envelope was something else, a strange collection of symbols, a cipher. The writer promised that his identity was locked away within this code. For the first time, the city wasn't just reading about a killer. The killer was reading back, watching their every move. The newspapers, faced with an impossible choice, published the letters, and true to his word, when his demands were met, the city held its breath, but the silence didn't last. The deaths continued. The next attack was even more audacious. It happened at Lake Berryessa in broad daylight. Another young couple was enjoying a peaceful afternoon by the water when they noticed a man watching them from a distance. He wore strange dark clothing, and his movements were slow, almost calculated. When he finally approached, he didn't shout, he didn't run. He spoke calmly, as if he was simply giving instructions. He tied up his victims with practiced efficiency, then stabbed them repeatedly, relentlessly. But he wasn't finished. Before leaving his victims for dead, the attacker walked to their car. With a black marker, he wrote something on the door, dates and locations of his previous attacks, and beneath them, a strange symbol, a circle with a cross through it, like a crosshair. This wasn't just a murder, it was a performance. It was a signature. The Zodiac Killer was no longer hiding in the shadows. He was stepping into the spotlight, making sure everyone knew his name, or at least his symbol. Just weeks later, the terror moved from the quiet, remote corners of Northern California into the very heart of the city. A taxi driver was shot and killed in his cab in a wealthy San Francisco neighborhood. The city froze. This wasn't happening on some dark, deserted road anymore. It was happening where people lived, where they worked, where they felt safe. Panic swept through the streets. Police patrols flooded the city. Composite sketches were released to the public, and thousands of tips poured in from terrified citizens. But none of it was enough. The killer was always one step ahead. And the letters kept coming. Each one was more arrogant than the last. Some openly mocked law enforcement, taunting them with clues and pointing out mistakes in their investigation before the police even admitted to them. Others contained new, more complex ciphers, daring the public to crack the code and reveal his secrets. An entire community became obsessed. Teachers, students, amateur cryptographers, thousands of people tried to solve the puzzle. Eventually, a couple of school teachers, Donald and Betty Harden, managed to crack the first cipher. The message they uncovered was chilling. The Zodiac wrote about how much he enjoyed killing people, describing it as the most thrilling experience. He explained his belief that all his victims would become his slaves in the afterlife. He wrote as if death were a game, a sport, and the entire city was his playing board. As the years passed, the investigation grew colder. Dozens of suspects were identified and investigated. Some seemed promising for a time, with circumstantial evidence or witness accounts pointing in their direction. But one by one they all fell apart. Alibis were confirmed, evidence was lost or mishandled, and different police jurisdictions failed to cooperate effectively. Witness descriptions of the killer were frustratingly inconsistent. Some said he was heavyset, others said he was average. Some remembered dark hair, others light. The one constant was the terror he inspired and the taunting voice in his letters. And then, slowly, the letters stopped. Or at least, they became less frequent, less convincing. For a while it seemed the nightmare was finally over. But the legend of the Zodiac never truly died. Decades later, new letters would occasionally surface, reviving old fears and reigniting the public's fascination. Were they real, or was it someone else, a copycat, trying to keep the myth alive? To this day, parts of the Zodiac ciphers remain unsolved, their secrets locked away forever. No confirmed identity was ever established. No arrest was ever made. The man who held an entire region hostage with fear simply vanished, fading back into the anonymity from which he came. And perhaps that's the most disturbing part of the Zodiac story. It's not just that he killed, it's that he turned murder into a spectacle, fear into a public game. He made an entire city his audience and then disappeared before the final act, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unresolved fear. The Zodiac Killer was never caught, and somewhere, between the ink of his letters, the mystery of his symbols, and the deafening silence he left behind, he may have one. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as unsettling as we did, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest mysteries.